before we proceed. Let us pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful and thankful for this gathering. We thank you for His Excellency, the President. We also thank you for the students from Harvard Business School. We pray that the meeting we have is going to be progressive and enlightening. This we pray in the Lord's name. Amen. Let us take our seats. Your Excellency, the President, Your Excellency, Ambassador Meg Whitman, Professor Bellio, students from Harvard Business School. Your Excellency, the expectation is just a very short program, but we'll have questions at the end, Q&A. So if you have any questions, kindly just prepare them. We'll pick them up at the end. But for now, allow me to invite Honorable Aden Mohammed to just give some remarks as we begin. Welcome, sir.
Your Excellency, this is a typical size of an HBS class. And one of the most dreadful events in HBS is you show up in the morning like this, and the professor calls any student at random. And on that basis, in the spirit of HBS, is Mohammed here? No, I'm just joking. I was going to ask you about your experience in Kenya. Anyway, without taking much time, Your Excellency, I would like to invite Professor Kim to make some remarks, and then we take it from there. Thank you.
Mr. President, Ambassador Whitman, members of Harvard Business School, class of 2025, Aden Mohammed, and all of those who have contributed to this occasion. Mr. President, I graduated from Harvard Business School in 1980. I look much younger than I really am. And after 7 years in the President's office in Nigeria, and I want to assure you, you'd rather be in Kenya than Nigeria. And after 30 years in business, Mr. President, for some strange reason, I decided to go back to teaching. And my mission was to bring Harvard into Africa and to bring Africa into Harvard. I designed the first 2 courses on Africa, and now we have a course called Global Immersion, in which the students are trying to do 3 things. 1, we're trying to teach them leadership. Secondly, we're trying to teach them teamwork. 3, we are trying to teach them to understand leadership in the context of a different continent, a different culture, and a different area. Harvard Business School has selected 16 countries to which they should go. 4 are in Africa. The 4 selected for Africa are Kenya, Rwanda, Morocco, and Ghana. My wife is from Ghana. I met her at Harvard Law School, and she never fails to remind me that Nigeria was not selected. All the students here selected Nairobi, Kenya, as their first choice of the 16 countries that were selected. During their time here, they have been attached to a number of Kenyan companies: Naivas, Coco, Prudential, Maidawa, and several others. And they have spent a few weeks trying to study the various problems of the companies, and this morning they presented their findings to the companies. I've already heard back from many of the companies that they did an outstanding job and that they would like Harvard to come back again next year. Mr. President, it is with great pride that I formally introduce to you the class of 2025 from what we very modestly regard as the #1 business school in the world. Thank you very much.
Okay. So my name is Meg Whitman. I'm the United States Ambassador to Kenya and the great class of 1979 at Harvard. When, interestingly, my class was 10% women. So pretty different than, I think your class is 50% women. Anyway, I have had a number of different jobs. I'm not a career foreign service officer. I am a business person. I was the CEO of eBay for 10 years, and then I ran for governor of California as a Republican. That might have been a problem. And then I ran HP, Hewlett-Packard Company, for 8 years. And was minding my own business when the President of the United States called me and said, "We'd like you to be an ambassador, and we want you to go to Kenya." And I said, "Kenya?" I was thinking France. But he said, "No, I want you to go to Kenya because Kenya is the tech capital of East Africa, would be the tech capital of all of the continent, and my tech background at HP and eBay he thought would be a perfect fit." So I had been to Kenya, but only a few times, and on business. And when you go to a place on business, you might as well be in Cleveland. It doesn't matter, because you just go from customer to customer to customer. So I have now been in Kenya for 2 years, and it has been a remarkable experience. First, my husband is here with me. He is a neurosurgeon, went to Harvard undergraduate and Harvard Medical School. And we've never lived outside the United States. So that's been a remarkable experience. I've never worked for the United States government. That's a whole nother experience. And it's been a remarkable chapter in our lives, because for us now this is about experiences. So I have been privileged to be here for the last 2 years. As you now know, Kenya is a remarkable country with lovely people, entrepreneurial people, hospitable people, people who work very hard, and so it's been a true privilege. And if I have to leave you with one thought, some of you may have seen my presentation called "Why Africa? Why Kenya? Why should you invest in Africa, and why should Kenya be your destination?" And the executive summary is supply chain diversification and 93% green energy. Every country now has to diversify their supply chain, because if we learned anything from the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it's not smart to have even a single source for your supply chain. And so now every company is like, where else can we go besides where we are? And it's a particular problem for the technology companies. Hewlett-Packard, where I was a CEO for 8 years, had 100% of our supply chain in China 3 years ago. That's a very dangerous proposition, because you never know what will happen. So supply chain diversification, and many companies have looked all over the world and have chosen Kenya as their destination. And if you are going to diversify your supply chain, you should go to some place with 93% renewable energy. So your manufacturing facility can be green and get you on your Scope 2 to Scope 3 emissions goals. So been a remarkable experience. It's been my privilege to work with Aden Mohammed, the president, who you will get to know, who is an extraordinary leader at an extraordinary time for Kenya and for Africa. So thank you.
Thank you, Balozi. And in case you're taking notes for Swahili, Balozi is ambassador in Swahili, so you can take that down. It is now my singular honor and pleasure to invite His Excellency the President to address the Harvard Business School students. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Whitman, good professor, and students of 2025 Harvard Business School. Good evening. How are you guys? You're good? Please relax. I can feel there is a lot of tension around. Please relax. This is going to be moments of sharing. I would want to ask you some questions, so you better be ready. First, let me welcome you to Kenya and join all the other people who you may have interacted in the course of your stay here in Kenya. Feel at home, and if any one of you chooses not to go back to America, we will give you a Kenyan citizenship. And the reason is I am a scientist by training, not at the Harvard Business School, but at Nairobi University. And I slightly feel intimidated by this Harvard story, because here in Kenya, the best university we have, and we normally bully others is Nairobi University. So we normally tell the other people, you come from Kenyatta University and Moi University and all the other universities. But then there is the University of Nairobi. I don't know what to say to Harvard Business School. But being a scientist, Kenya, if you read between the lines of science, the earliest remains of man have been traced to Kenya. So this is the home of human origin. And therefore, when you are in Kenya, you are at home. So I should have started by saying, welcome home. Secondly, you are in the continent of the future. I say the future because as a leader in this continent, there is every reason, those of you who are in business school, there is every reason for you to think about the future. And the future is here. The future is here for 3.5 reasons. This is the continent with the highest renewable energy capacity and potential. As you've heard, Kenya is 93% green on our grid. We intend to make it 100% in the next 7 years. Kenya will all be green energy. And the future is green. I know there are people who still need some persuasion about where the future is. I don't expect that from anybody from Harvard Business School. I know all of you are persuaded that the future is green. And therefore, if we have 60% of the world's renewable energy assets, that's the future. Secondly, this is the continent that has the youngest population. Our median age is 20, 19 and a half actually. And 50% of the world's workforce by 2050 will be, 40% will be coming from this continent. 40% of the world's workforce will come from this continent by 2050. And by 2050, a quarter of the world's population will live in this continent. This will be the largest market then. On top of that, mineral resources, natural resources, this is the place. And therefore, as you think about the future, think about this continent. And as leaders in this continent, we are working at it to make sure that we consolidate the African market into a single market. You must have heard about Africa Continental Free Trade Area. 55 countries, 54 are already signed in. And we are determined to make sure that this continent becomes that continent of the future. And if you are thinking about food security, global food security, 65% of the world's arable, uncultivated land is in Africa. That's where the food security of the future is going to be. So I just want to persuade you that as you walk in the soils of, step in the soils of this continent, just think about the future. And you made the right decision to come this way. Good professor, thank you very much for making it possible for these great people to visit our continent. And just to assure you that we are weaving a new narrative, a narrative that speaks to the reality of what this continent is about. For a very long time, the narrative around this continent was about war and conflict and disease and poverty and hunger. I want to tell you, this continent is about opportunity. It's about investment. This is the future. Professor here from Nigeria will tell you about a Nigerian proverb that says, until the lion learned to write, all stories glorified the hunter. We're beginning to write our own story. We've begun to write our own story. Many people have written stories about us for a long time. We've learned how to write our own story. And we're going to write this right story about this continent. So, to you, as you think about the future, as you think about opportunities in the future, as you think about investment, business, entrepreneurship over the future, you will do yourselves well to think about this continent. And we will be here to partner with you and to see how we can do this together. It's no longer going to be the North versus the South. I think that adversarial engagement is no longer necessary. We've made a decision ourselves that we're going to be part of the solution. We're going to provide, our own ideas, our own thoughts, and inform what ultimately becomes global solutions. So together again, we will forge that partnership and build the future together. I don't want to make this a lecture, but I want to listen to anybody who wants to know something different. And finally, I will also ask a few questions at the end. So thank you very much. Welcome to Kenya. Please, by all means.
Mohammed, Saudi Arabia.
Thank you for welcoming us, Mr. President. I'm really interested in the energy space and the fact that there's a high percentage of clean energy in Kenya. And I'm curious to know what kind of role is the country taking in navigating between the energy transition towards the 100% and also the energy access to households and to the population.
Thank you very much. The energy transition conversation is a conversation that informed most of the debate that we had in COP28 in Dubai. It was a very pointed conversation. And there is a realization by everybody, including the reluctant ones, that the future is green. What we need to agree is how we get there. And the journey to the future already began. There are midway interventions, whether we talk about gas, is going to be a very big component of transition energy. The rest of us, like Kenya, are way ahead in the transition to green energy. We're already moving in that direction. And our push is that we already have huge potential of renewable energy. And sometimes the conversation is between the fossil fuel resources we have, like the one we have in Kenya, for example. We have oil in Kenya. And the decision that I have to make is, do I invest in fossil fuel or do I invest in green energy? And we have made a conscious decision that we're going to invest in renewable energy. And to speak directly to your point, we believe it is possible and progressively it is becoming viable to invest in renewable energy. The cost of solar panels is coming down exponentially. The whole investment around that space, though at the moment still looks high, but I believe that shortly it's going to be the cheapest energy source available. So our push is investment and technology to unlock the potential of renewable energy in our continent. It will not only give us renewable energy, it will supply energy to the 600 million Africans who do not have energy. It will also give us the opportunity for 900 million Africans who don't have clean cooking. And it will also assist other economies to decarbonize their growth. So green growth is the future, not just for Africa, but for everybody else. So if there is going to be, if we are going to decarbonize our industrialization or our growth, we need to unlock the huge potential of renewable energy, and that is in our continent.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. I am wondering what you believe is the number one most pressing challenge facing the country today, and how are you thinking about solutions to that problem?
Climate change is the single biggest threat that faces Kenya today. We came out of a drought a year and a half ago, a devastating drought. We lost 2.5 million heads of livestock in Kenya. We lost 9.5 million livestock in the Horn of Africa in 4 countries. And then we came straight from a drought into floods. In the last 2 months, we've lost close to 200 Kenyans to floods. And of course, a lot of infrastructure destroyed and many things. So climate change is the single biggest threat that I see today, because it compounds the other challenges we have. It takes away resources that we would use, for example, for education, for health, and for all the other important social services. We have to reallocate those resources to repair, to feed people, to make sure kids go to school. For example, last year, we had to adjust our budget because we had to feed an extra 4 million kids in school. We had to step up from feeding 1.5 million kids to give them a meal in school. We had to go to 5.5 million kids. So again, it makes it that much more difficult for us to drive our growth. And then there is one more thing that comes with climate change. The whole space around the economy becomes much more complicated to handle for those of us who have the privilege to run the affairs of countries. Because when your budgets are distorted, you quickly sink into debt and debt distress. That's why you have 27 countries in our continent in debt distress, because they cannot handle the crisis, and especially when they come in droves. You have the war in Europe, you have COVID pandemic, then you have effects of climate change, That compounded makes it near impossible to run anything of a semblance of an organized budget. So it becomes a crisis through and through. So this climate change makes development complicated and puts countries at a position where you have to choose between development and survival. So this is the crisis we face.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you for hosting us here today. My question for you is, how can we as Americans contribute to the future success of Kenya as we go back to our classrooms in Boston and as we become future business leaders?
That's a difficult one, because the ambassador is sitting here and I have a pending state visit to the US and I don't want to put that in jeopardy. But let me, let me say this, that the US is a great partner of Kenya. It is actually the single largest trading partner that we have with Kenya. US is a single trading partner with Kenya. And we appreciate that. It's a relationship we have built over many years. And the conversations that are going on between us and the US at the moment is on the two very important areas. The area around the economy and what we can do together to get the economy in the right shape through trade and through investment. So we are negotiating currently a trade and investment partnership agreement between the US and Kenya. Unfortunately, it wasn't ready for sign-off in this state visit, but there are many other investment opportunities that that are ongoing, from AGOA on one end to investments in green energy resources, data centers, and many other things. The second important aspect that is important for Kenya and America to work is on the area of security. You realize that Kenya is an anchor state in this region. We have Somalia on one end with serious problems. We have issues in Ethiopia. We have a big problem. In fact, I will be having a meeting tomorrow with Meg and other people to discuss South Sudan and what we need to do with them. We have another occasion on Friday where we are doing something about the main Sudan. We have issues in DRC Congo. So, and then we have the whole menace of terrorism and Al-Shabaab in our region. So the partnership we have with America on matter security is very significant. And if we can do more around those two things, around security as the anchor state here, so that Kenya can work with the countries in our region on stability and making sure that we have security, and secondly, to make sure that Kenya has what it takes to hold the fort and to assist other regions by having a stable, much more progressive, and an economy that can withstand the shocks and can also support the other countries in the region. So these are two very important areas that I think between Kenya and the US we need to do more.
Mr. President, can I add one thing to that? Tell the story of Africa and tell the story of Kenya. The narrative on Africa, I think, is 20 years old in the United States. People do not understand the opportunity here. When I was the CEO of Hewlett-Packard, I thought about Africa about 1% of my time. If I knew what I knew now, I would be thinking, how is HP going to invest much more heavily in Africa, and the destination would be Kenya. So all of you who have now been here, and you have to see it to believe it, I want you to go back and tell your fellow students, tell your professors, tell people that you might go to work for, that the future is Africa, and whatever company you go to work for, advocate for Africa and advocate for Kenya.
Hello, Mr. President. Thank you for your time. I know prior to this you were leading the agriculture department, and my question is, where do you see the next 5 to 10 year growth of Kenya coming from? Is it still agriculture, tourism, or in particular, I want to hear about technology and investment in manufacturing and how even AI could play a role in that growth story?
I think the future is in technology. And technology in the sense of the whole data center space, the whole AI space. I'll give you an example. I went to 400 kilometers from here, rural Kenya, and I went to this college. We were doing a facility in that college, and I went to see how the progress. And then, of course, I went to this class, and it was an ICT class, and there was this young man called Brian. So I meet Brian, and I asked Brian, okay, so what course are you doing, and how is it going? And then he told me, okay, my course is going on well, but I found something very exciting. Every 2 hours, every day, I can earn some money from working online on a digital job platform because we supplied internet and they have computers. So when I went, I had to ask him, so Brian, what exactly do you do? So Brian tells me, I work for an AI company in Germany. Brian has not been to Nairobi, the capital city. He's a village boy. Brian does not have a passport. He's never traveled anywhere. But look at what the internet and technology can do. Before even as a government we have wrapped our minds around policy on AI, because we don't yet, we have some sketchy. Brian already works for an AI company. That is how much leap technology can do for us. And that is the reason why the government of Kenya, and we made this one of the 5 pillars of my administration's plan, is a digital superhighway to make sure that we have another 100,000 kilometers of fiber optic backbone around the country. Every ward in Kenya, smallest unit, will have internet. And it's a very big space for us. We believe that is where the future jobs are. That is where future commerce is going to be transacted. And that is where this is going to happen. The next action is on that space, on the technology space. I think that's where the future is. And we will use technology to make sure that we drive efficiency, we drive all the other things we need in all the other sectors. Let me put it, finally, even for agriculture. This year, we registered 6 million farmers, and we supplied fertilizer, crop-specific, soil-specific, using technology on e-voucher to every farmer. We got rid of all the inefficiencies. We got rid of all the pilferage. It was efficient, it was targeted, and it gave us the best results ever. Because of that, we increased our food production by 40% in one season. That is how technology, that's why I say technology is going to play front and center going into the future. It will help us drive all the other sectors, whether it is our tax space, technology is going to be very important. Whether it's going to be in agriculture, technology is going to be very important. That's what I think the future is.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. So we've heard this week from the Kenyan people, and we certainly experienced ourselves that Kenya is the heart of East Africa. So I'm curious in what you think is the role of Kenya in the journey towards Pan-African integration.
Kenya is the largest economy in Eastern Africa. And we already, the East African community is the most progressive community in the continent already. This is the region where we are already at 28% intra-regional trade. All the others are far behind. We are already a customs union. We are moving towards a confederation. We have a working parliament, East African parliament, that is working, that is legislating. We have an East African Court of Justice. There is a lot of already interaction between this region. And we are, so to speak, what the rest of the continent is looking at as a template for them to pull up and move on. And because of Kenya's championship of integration, at the last summit of the Africa Union, Kenya and myself, I was appointed to be the champion for the reform of the Africa Union, the AU.
The government is thinking about to address certain regulatory gaps, and how does the government plan to support entrepreneurs both locally and also from foreign countries? Thank you.
As a state, we must be able to enhance our taxes. So my drive is to push Kenya. Possibly this year we will be at 16% from 14%. I want in my term, God willing, to leave it at between 20 and 22%. It's going to be difficult. I have a lot of explaining to do. People will complain, but I know finally they will appreciate that aspect is to make sure that they are in school, they get a correct training, they get a correct knowledge. Number two, Kenya prides itself with having the best human capital. And that best human capital is sharpened through education, training, and knowledge. So we spend a lot of resources in that direction. It is the reason why this time last year, we launched the Kenya Open University to expand space in our learning infrastructure. So technology is playing a very significant role in our education sector. We are spending resources on digital learning, digital training, and as I told you earlier, we've even changed the law on what we call Constituency Development Fund so that we can deploy internet ICT hubs to the lowest locality in Kenya, because we realize that education is good, but digital learning is going to have an age. So that is the trajectory we are looking at. I know you have said something about retaining our human capital. That's very important to us. But we have a youth bulge. And sometimes we have more human capital that we are ready to share. So our space was in China. I don't know if she was still running eBay, whether that would still be the case, or she would be thinking differently. So it's the case. We live in a very dynamic world, and progressively you have to look at what are the national interests. Where is technology going? How are your national interests aligned? There are values we believe in, for example, as a country. We are a proudly democratic country. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in government that has checks and balances. These are values that we share with many countries and we pursue. We also...
Then I'll